Okay, good morning, dear students. Soham, good morning. Asmita, Kamlakant, Tanvi, Shambhavi, Riddhi, Athar, Ayushi, Krishna, Manajay, Parimal, Anushree. Good morning to all of you. So today we shall study something different. That is a lesson. That is a lesson we shall study from your supplementary reader, that is footprints without feet. So dear students, I'm going to teach you that. Okay, so as you can see dear students, it is footprints without feet. Now what does this particular title represent? Footprints without feet. It means there are footprints but they are without any feet. It means what kind of image is created in your mind whenever I say there are some footprints but without feet. What kind of an image is created in your mind by this particular title, footprints without feet? There are footprints but no trace of any feet. So tell me dear students, you tell me what could be the reason. What could be the reason, you tell me, when I say footprints without feet? What kind of an image is created in your mind? There are footprints, but there are no feet, right? So what kind of an image? Can you tell me what kind of an image is this? Gungun, tell me, what kind of an image is created in your mind whenever I say there are footprints but no feet around? Footprints can be seen, but no foot can be seen. Footprints can be seen, but without any feet. So what is this? Can you guess anything? Like if you are able to see the footprints of something, you should also be able to trace that particular thing that has created this footprint. In this lesson, you cannot find a trace of these. You cannot find the source of these footprints. So that is all about invisibility, right? It means something is invisible. So dear students, that is what we have to understand. Something which is invisible is mentioned here. Now the question is, can a man become invisible? This is the story of a scientist who discovers how to make himself invisible. Does he use or misuse his discovery? So dear students, you shall come across a character in the story by the name of Griffin, who is a scientist, but who is a scientist who has discovered how to become invisible. But this particular discovery of invisibility is something which he is making use in a bad manner. Okay, in fact, he is making misuse of the scientific discovery. He is not making use of it, he is making misuse of the scientific discovery, right? Therefore, even though he is a scientist, he is not respected, he is not adored, because he has discovered how to make himself invisible, but on the other hand, he has misused his discovery. By being invisible to others, he is causing great harm to human beings and property also. Like he is causing damage to the property, he is causing damage to human beings. Therefore, his discovery is something which he is making bad use of. So he is making bad use of scientific discovery, right? So that is what, yes, Gungun, invisible, something that we cannot see. Yes, of course. So footprints without feet means you are able to see the footprints on the sand or on any wet surface or somewhere, but you are not able to discover the source of the footprints. Like who has created the footprints is something that you are not able to create. I mean, not able to discover. So that is why it is something to do. It has something to do with invisibility. Therefore, footprints without feet uh, is something what is invisibility all about, right? Okay. Now let's move on to the paragraph. The two boys started in surprise at the fresh, muddy imprints of a pair of bare feet. What was a barefooted man doing on the steps of a house in the middle of London? And where was the man? The two boys started in surprise. They started in surprise. The two boys on the street, they started in surprise at the fresh, muddy footprints of a pair of bare feet. So, whenever two boys on a street were able to discover fresh, muddy footprints, fresh, muddy imprints means fresh, muddy footprints of a pair of bare feet. They were very much surprised. Why were the two boys surprised? Because what was a barefooted man doing on the steps of a house in the middle of London? And where was the man? They are not able to discover the man who has created these, imprints, right? That is why, and that also on the steps of a house in the middle of a London street, right? In the steps on the steps of a house, and also in the middle of London. Where was the man? As they gazed, a remarkable sight met their eyes. This is a beautiful sentence, dear students. A remarkable sight met their eyes. As they gazed, as they were gazing in surprise, a fresh footmark appeared from nowhere. Okay, they were focused on the old footprint, but in the meantime, what happened? A fresh footmark started appearing from nowhere. Further footprints followed one after another, descending the steps and progressing down the street. Further footprints followed, one after another. Uh, you know, pair of new footprints being created, right? Without the source of the footprints being created, being discovered. That is what has made everyone surprised. They are not able to discover who is creating these footprints, right? And one after another, further footprints were being created. The boys followed, fascinated, until the muddy impressions became fainter and fainter, and at last disappeared altogether. The boys followed. The two boys were following. They were fascinated until the muddy impressions became fainter and fainter and at last disappeared altogether. So, as one after another, then another pair of footprints were being created without being able to see the man who is creating these footprints. The boys became so startled, they became so surprised that they started following the footprints. And at a certain point, the footprints became fainter and fainter, and at last there were no footprints altogether. It means the man has sort of disappeared somewhere. Okay, after going to certain distance, the man has disappeared suddenly. Can you imagine how scary is this scene? You can see the footprints, but not the person who is creating the footprints. Okay, so the two boys were after these footprints, after some distance, these footprints disappeared. Means the man just disappeared, so his footprints also disappeared. You can understand that one person is running or one person is going at the particular direction, but you are not able to see the image of the person, right? That is what has surprised the two boys. They were very sort of surprised and taken aback at the very sight of this, right? As then you see here the explanation. Sorry, I think here, no? Okay. The explanation of the mystery was really simple enough. The explanation of the mystery was really simple enough. The bewildered boys had been following a scientist who had just discovered how to make the human body transparent. So, bewildered boys means they were very much surprised. That is why they are referred to as bewildered. So, the bewildered boys had been following a scientist. The narrator is giving us information that these bewildered boys followed a scientist who had discovered how to make the human body transparent. How to make the human body transparent, right? Now, let us know something about the scientist. What is his name, what he does, and whether it is something what is for the good of the humanity or it is for the bad of humanity. Let's find out, dear students. Griffin, the scientist, had carried out experiment after experiment, swallowed certain rare drugs, and his body became as transparent as a sheet of glass, though it also remained as solid as glass. Right. So this is where we get the information about the scientist. Right. This is where we get the information about the scientist. Griffin, the scientist, had carried out experiment after experiment. Okay. So Griffin was carrying out experiment after experiment to prove that the human body could become invisible. Okay, what did he want to prove? He wanted to prove that human body became invisible. Finally, he swallowed certain rare drugs, and his body became as transparent as a sheet of glass, though it also remained as solid as glass. Right. So he experimented and then came up with a rare drugs. He discovered certain rare drugs by taking which a human body can become transparent as a sheet of glass, though it also remained as solid as glass. Right. Brilliant scientist though he was, Griffin was rather a lawless person. See, he might be a brilliant scientist, but he was a lawless person. Lawless means he was not conforming to any kind of rules. He was not complying to any kind of rules. That is why he is referred to as lawless person. His landlord disliked him and tried to eject him. Right. His landlord disliked him and tried to eject him. Eject him means try to drive him out of the house. In revenge, Griffin set fire to the house. He became angry and in revenge, he set fire to the house. To get away without being seen, he had to remove his clothes. Thus, it was that he became a homeless wanderer without clothes, without money, and quite invisible. until he happened to step in some mud and left footprints as he walked. Okay? When he, until and unless became, he landed himself in some mud and left footprints as he walked, he was not he was not it was not possible to trace him, right? So this is what is the story of Griffin the scientist. So Griffin was a brilliant scientist. We come to know here that he was rather a lawless person, even though he was a brilliant scientist, but he was not complying to any set of rules that a citizen is supposed to oblige, right? He was staying on a rent basis in someone's house, but his landlord disliked him and tried to reject or turn him out of the house. When they turned him out of the house, he became very angry, and in revenge, Griffin set fire to the house. Right? To get away without being seen, he had to remove his clothes. Thus, he became a homeless wanderer because he did not have any home. The rented house where he was living had also gone. He was running without clothes, without money, without by being quite invisible. Right? Now, let's move on to the next paragraph. He escaped easily enough from the boys who followed his footprints in London. He was able to escape easily from those two boys. At the starting, we found about two boys. So these boys tried to follow him, but he was able to easily escape those two boys. But his adventures were by no means over. His adventures were by no means over. He had chosen a bad time of the year to wander about London without clothes. Okay, he was wandering, he was roaming from one place to another in the city of London, but it was a bad time. Why? Because it was very, very cold. It was in January, and in January, European countries become chilled winter. It's very, very cold. It was midwinter, the air was bitterly cold, and he could not do without clothes. Instead of walking about the streets, he decided to slip into a big London store for warmth. Right? So, as the air became bitterly cold and he was feeling so cold, so instead of walking about the streets, what he decided was to slip into a big London store for warmth, to get some warmth from this biting cold weather condition outside. He slipped into a big London store, right? Closing time arrived, and as soon as the doors were shut, Griffin was able to give himself the pleasure of clothing and feeding himself without regard to expense. Without regard to expense. So, dear students, do you understand the meaning of this? The closing time of the store arrived, and as soon as the doors were shut, Griffin could easily take his own time because there is no one around. Shop is closed now. Therefore, he gave himself the pleasure of clothing. He could take any cloth he liked because there were plenty of them available. So, he gave himself the pleasure of clothing and feeding himself without regard to expense because there is no one to charge money from him. He broke open boxes and wrappers. He broke open boxes and wrappers and fitted himself out with warm clothes. Soon, with shoes, an overcoat, and a wide brimmed hat, he became a fully dressed and visible person. Right? So, as there was no one around, shop was closed, and moreover, it was very cold in January. Therefore, He gave himself the pleasure of wearing the warm clothes. Then he put on the shoes, overcoat, and white brimmed hat, all this stuff, and thereby he became a fully dressed and visible person. In the kitchen of the restaurant, he found cold meat and coffee, and he followed up the meal with sweets and wine taken from the grocery store. Finally, he settled down to sleep on a pile of quilts. Right. Eventually, he went to sleep. Okay. If only Griffin had managed to wake up in good time, all might have been well. But Griffin did not wake up in time the following morning. As it was, he did not wake up until the assistants were already arriving next morning in the store, of course, right? Because he was sleeping inside the store. When he saw a couple of them, you see, no head, headless person, okay? So when he could see that some people were chasing him from London store, he came out and into the open street. And this time also will be able to sort of escape uh, people who were chasing him. As you can see here, approaching, he panicked and began to run. He started running. Then naturally gave chase. They gave him chase. They were running after him. They gave him chase. In the end, he was able to escape only by quickly taking off his newly found clothes. So once more he found himself invisible but naked in the chill January air. So in chill January air, in the middle of the street in London city, he could again land himself into trouble. He would be feeling very cold once again, because with clothes he will remain visible to some extent. Therefore, he had to take off his clothes in order to rescue himself from the chasing people, from the people who were chasing him. This time, he decided to try the stock of a theatrical company in the hope of finding not only clothes but also something that would hide the empty space above his shoulders. Right. So this time he took shelter somewhere in the stock of a theatrical company in the hope of finding not only clothes but also something that would hide the empty space above the shoulders, right? Because you can see empty spaces there na, above the shoulders. You see here, I show you, oh yeah, the empty space above the shoulders. So this time he will try to cover it up. So this time he decided to try the stock of a theatrical company. Uh, with the hope of finding not only clothes but also something that would hide the empty space above his shoulders. Shivering with cold, he hurried to Drury Lane, the center of the theatre world. He soon found a suitable shop. He made his way, invisible, upstairs and came out a little later wearing bandages round his forehead, dark glasses, false nose, big bushy side whiskers, and large hat. To escape without being seen, he carelessly attacked the shopkeeper from behind, after which he robbed him of all the money he could find. Right? So this is what he does actually by being invisible. He causes damage to human beings and property. He does not make good use of scientific discovery, right? So what happened, dear students? So when he landed himself in a suitable shop, he went upstairs, and then he started wearing bandage around his forehead, then dark glasses, everything he started wearing, side whiskers, large hat, and to escape without being seen from people, he carelessly attacked the shopkeeper from behind, took all the money, and then he left the store. Right. Then you see here, eager to get away from crowded London, he took a train to the village. Eager to get away from crowded London, he took a train to the village of Iping, where he booked 2 rooms at the local inn. So he wanted to avoid the crowded London. Therefore, he took a train and went to a village. He went to a village where he booked two rooms at the local inn. The arrival of a stranger at an inn in winter was in any case an unusual event. The arrival of a stranger at an inn in winter was in any case an unusual event. So when he came to an inn in a village, it was something which was unusual because normally in winter no one comes. So he became a stranger, he became the talks of the village people, he became the center of attraction for the village people because he came at such a odd time in the cold winter season. A stranger of such uncommon appearance set all tongues wagging. It means everybody was talking about him. Mrs. Hall, the landlord's wife, made every effort to be friendly. Mrs. Hall was the landlord's wife, and Mrs. Hall, Mrs. Hall was the landlord's wife, um, in whose house Griffin took shelter, or you can say in whose house Griffin started living on rent, right? So initially, Mrs. Hall tried to be friendly with him, but Griffin had no desire to talk and told her, "My reason for coming to Iping is a desire for solitude. I do not wish to be disturbed in my work. Besides, an accident has affected my face." Okay. So, what kind of a reason he gave to Mrs. Hall? He told her that the reason for which he came to Iping was to have some loneliness or to live in loneliness. Number two, he was a scientist, so he wanted to do his experiments without being disturbed. And then he said, moreover, an accident has affected my face. So, for all these reasons, I am not interested to talk to any one of you. Please do not disturb me and come to talk to me in my room. Satisfied that her guest was an eccentric scientist, and in view of the fact that he had paid her in advance, and he had paid her in advance, remember, who had paid her in advance? She had paid her in advance. He had paid Mrs. Hall in advance, right? So, as Griffin had paid Mrs. Hall in advance, therefore Mrs. Hall preferred to keep quiet most of the time. Mrs. Hall was prepared to excuse his strange habits and irritable temper. But the stolen money did not last long, and presently Griffin had to admit that he had no more ready cash. Okay, stolen money did not last long, and presently Griffin had to admit that he had no more ready cash. He pretended, however, that he was expecting a check to arrive at any time. So he told the landlady that his check is going to come very soon. Um, might be the money that he stolen from London store. That money is going to be over, and moreover, he has given some money to Mrs. Hall as advance rent. And now, as the days went by, his money also started decreasing. He started. His money also, um, started becoming less and less. Okay. Now you see, shortly afterwards, a curious episode happened. What happened afterwards? Very early in the morning, a clergyman and his wife were awakened by noises in the study. Okay. So now that his money has run out, almost run out, he would try to find out some more sources as to how he can steal some more money, right? And moreover, he can render himself invisible. Therefore, he has an advantage over many people. So now he has entered in the house of a clergyman, that is churchman, and his wife were they in the house of a clergyman, who and his wife were awakened by noises in the study. Creeping downstairs, they heard the chink of money being taken from the clergyman's desk. Without making any noise and with a poker grasped firmly in his hand, the clergyman flung open the door. Surrender. But clergyman could not trace him because he rendered himself invisible. That is why the clergyman was not successful in order to catch the invisible man, right? So, dear students, let's. It's time for us to wind up here today. We shall meet tomorrow at the same time. So, dear students, tomorrow I shall wind up this lesson for you. Okay, thank you so much for being with me. Shoham, please be regular. Every day you come, and whatever you have missed out, please see the video on YouTube. Okay, and rest of you, I shall meet you tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Please register your presence and then you can leave. Thank you, Asmita, Riddhi, Achal, Akanksha, Parimal. Thank you so much.